living in an RV versus living in a tiny home. That's what I want to explore in this video. Me, someone who lives in their car, and someone who a couple years ago, when I looked to simplify my life, I looked into living in a tiny home and I looked into living in an RV because both of them were a great option, I thought, to downsize my life, to cut expenses, and live below my means. Living below your means is cutting your expenses and having an income greater than your expenses so that you can save money and that you have more options in life to maybe use your creativity to do things you love so that you can live a more inspired life. And that's what I've tried to do the past couple years, is simplify my life, live below my means, and use more of my creative gifts, whether it's YouTube or other things, so that I can live a more inspired life. And overall, it has worked. Overall, living in my car has worked out great for me, and I enjoy it. It's not perfect, it has sacrifices, but I enjoy it. But in this video, I want to share with you what I learned in looking at tiny homes and what I learned looking at RVs and my thoughts on them and how they compare. The first is a tiny home versus an RV. RV stands for recreational vehicle. An RV could be a travel trailer or a motorhome. A tiny home versus an RV, the biggest difference is the mobility. So a tiny home will not come on wheels normally. They do have some exceptions there. But an RV, whether it's a travel trailer or motorhome, is very mobile. So the biggest difference is the mobility. And mobility is flexibility, and that can give you an edge in life. Example, if you decide to live a simplified life, being able to pick up and go, to change states, to change towns, to look for work or to travel, either one, whether you're going to move location because of a job or if you're going to move location because you want to see something new, you having the ability to just start your car, start your motorhome, hitch your RV, hitch your travel trailer, and be able to move like that, that's a huge amount of flexibility that will make you more employable because you can now choose from jobs, not just in your town, but anywhere in the country because your house is on wheels. And you can go visit anywhere in the country because your house is on wheels. You don't need to book a flight. You don't need to book a hotel. Anytime you want, you can travel. So the mobility, which equals flexibility, and having an RV and living in an RV is a big and the biggest probably advantage versus living in a tiny home. When you live in a tiny home, I looked into it. Again, 90% of them don't have any wheels. There's some that are like cargo trailers, but let's just say that the standard tiny home has no wheels. So you need to put it on a piece of land. And that is your biggest restriction. That's your biggest negative. So most of the time, to be able to comply with local and building municipality rules, meaning each town has certain rules about how you can build a home, you have to adhere to building code. You're going to find a problem in finding land that will accommodate a tiny home. Most tiny homes are under 1,000 square foot, and a lot of them even under 500 square feet. So you're going to have to find unrestricted land or land that allows that. And most of the times that means you're going to live in the middle of nowhere, deep in the country, deep in rural land. In rural land, there's less job opportunities and there may be less desirable location. So now you're landlocked in an area that may not have a lot of economic opportunity and it may not be very inspirational. You're certainly not, in most cases in America, you're certainly not going to be able to find a piece of land to put a tiny home by the beach. And even if you are, you're not going to find anywhere close to a cheap piece of land by the beach. And again, this tiny home versus RV, it all ties into a simplified living below your means lifestyle. And for most people, even if you make good money above average, you don't want to get to a point where you start to spend what you make or live at your means. You know, you don't want to live above your means, certainly, but you don't even want to live at your means. You want to live below so that each month you can save. Each month, maybe you can risk a little bit. Each month you can spend and enjoy a good lifestyle. So buying a tiny home and having an expensive piece of land to put it on is not wise. Buying a tiny home and putting it in the middle of nowhere may not make sense. So that static, landlocked, finding land for a tiny home is a big negative. And then if you look at it, what is an RV? What is it, whether it's a travel trailer or motorhome? It's just a tiny home. So when you really look at a tiny home versus an RV, they're both tiny living quarters. They're both tiny living dwellings. My car is a dwelling. So really, an RV, travel trailer, or a motorhome is a tiny home. It's a tiny home on wheels. And you can bring it you can bring it to any RV park, and they have RV parks by the beach. They have them in cities. So there's some restriction there, but you have a lot more options in where to put your tiny home if you consider your tiny home an RV or motorhome versus a tiny home that's a static building, whether it's a shed or something else. You can't just pick that up and put it anywhere. So that's why I think an RV, whether it's a travel trailer or motorhome, wins. It wins over a tiny home because you have more options on where to put it. It's more mobile, and that's all it is. It's a tiny home. So it's, you know, I think a tiny home, if you're looking at a tiny home as a static building or shed, the only time that would make sense, in my opinion, in my view, would be is if you already own a piece of land in the country, in an area you like, and you want to live there. You don't want to do much traveling. You have your financial situation worked out where you live, and you just plop it there, and you're willing not to travel. You're willing not to need the flexibility to have to move if you don't need to. So either you own land in a certain area that you can put a tiny home, or you found cheap land in an area that you want to live in the middle of nowhere, and you're fine with being landlocked. But for me, there's something that I discovered about myself as I went on this journey and started living as a nomad, is that I like having options. Even if I stay in a certain town for a long period of time, I like the idea that all I have to do is start my car. And even one day, if I would upgrade to an RV, I like the idea that I could start that rig and leave. There's a hurricane coming, I can leave. There's a job opportunity I need to take in another area, I can leave. I have to visit a sick relative, I can take my house with me. My house is my car, or my house would be my RV. It's a tiny home on wheels. And that's a huge benefit, in my opinion. And that's why, in my opinion, the tiny home battle between tiny homes and RVs win. And RVs are basically a tiny home. So I just wanted to expand in this video and share my experience as someone who lives a simplified life, because I want to enjoy more of life. I have for 2 years plus. And I hope my thoughts help you. If they did and you're not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. Take the effort to click the thumbs up button, share the video. I make daily vlogs. I also go live every night. But outside of that, live your best life. Everyone has to define their own life. Keep yourself around positive people, and less is more. Even with friends, less is more. Keep your circle small. Take care of yourself. Do the best you can. Stay positive.